Alright, Record of Ragnarok, you gotta stop teasing me at this point. Just show me a fight with Hermes already before I lose my mind. Thank you to our $5 patrons, Sinis Lancelot, Artgoon, and the Divine Anpu. And big thank you to our $25 patron, the Mr. Greed. Now, before I'm in this breakdown of chapter 60 of Record of Ragnarok, please do me a favor, leave your own thoughts on the chapter in the comment section down below, leave a like, and subscribe if you aren't already. Also, make sure that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Any support would be appreciated. Now, let's get into last month's poll. So, last time I asked y'all, after that big, thick, girthy 81-page backstory, what y'all think about it? Give the chapter a rating and tell me why down below. And with a hefty, juicy 64%, 7 to 8 was chosen, well written, though it didn't tackle me personally. Notably, I did expect this, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I knew that 9 out of 10 came personally for me, just because it was like, that was well written, and it kind of got me a little bit. And of course, I was excited to see if the mom was alive in the whole Record of Ragnarok tournament going on right now. I was like, hoping to see her reaction, and I think that was really, really good. But to be fair, it did come in second place. The 9 to 10 perfect little story caught me right in the feels. Got 23% of the vote, so admittedly under half of the leading points. But then it was followed up by a 6% in 5 to 6. It was decent. You want to get back to the fight. I definitely understand this viewpoint too. In comparison to a lot of our fights so far, I'd say this almost feels like the least grandiose, and that's kind of weird to say when we've just had fights that are just punching, and we've had fights that are like literally a sword versus a spear before. Like, this is a martial artist and a Biden wielder. Like, this should be super duper hype, but it's been, we're kind of waiting for that extra little step, that extra little bit of juice that'll make this fight evolve beyond something that we've really gotten so far. So I'm not sure that people want to get back to the fight. Then with this 2%, 4 to 3, kind of meh. I was actually pretty shocked this was not the lowest one, or no, was the lowest one, and the bottom one wasn't. But kind of meh. I especially agree on this one too. I do feel like Qin has gotten like a lot of a focus, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. He's a great character, obviously, but like in terms of the people we're spending a whole ton of our time and dedicating a whole ton of our time to, Qin being this when we have who knows how much fight left, especially after the end of chapter 61. Like, I don't know how much we have, how much farther do we have to go before this fight is truly over. Like, it seems like we're pushing our limits pretty darn quick. And then bad 1 to 2. This got 5% of the vote, which was pretty impressive to me. Especially out of 84 votes, that's a decent chunk of people. That's a pretty decent chunk of the vote. So shout out to the people who didn't know why we were still getting backstory. However, make sure you leave your own vote for tomorrow's poll, dropping at 12 p.m. in order to get your input in, because I love doing this. This is a great way to get the community consensus on thoughts on the chapters and stuff like that, and I think they're really enjoyable to do. Now, let's get into chapter 60. What's up, guys? I love Puntu, and here we are to chapter 60 of Record of Ragnarok, which is known as Promises and Oaths. And pretty aptly named, if you ask me. Obviously, this is really the oath of the human king, and that's always great to see. You know, big dubs for humanity. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, humanity didn't look the best in the last chapter, but big dubs for humanity anyway. Come on now. And obviously, we open up and we get to see that the backstory is essentially what Gear just heard. Right? She's crying about it as we're in this heaven's arena, if you will, and she's just shocked that like a king like Huang had a past like that, and notably, I was shocked too. So this is the one time I actually let Gear slide for being slightly annoying. But then we get to see that Brunhild, like I know why we didn't get this part included in the backstory. It sort of would have like deflected from not the tension, or at least it wasn't necessary to the narrative of last chapter. But like a big point of last chapter was, hey, okay, you have that parasitic empathy, whatever, but how'd you start seeing stars? And Brunhild just covers it in one quick page, like, oh, he was exposed to the continued hatred of people in the enemy territory. In those special circumstances, he endured an unimaginable amount of pain, and thusly, after countless battles, Qin Shi Huang managed to awaken the ability to see the key points, or the stars as he calls them, of people. So he did it from practice, I guess. And notably, this is once again, like, this kind of puts a dull forecast over what happened in chapter 61. And I know I'm like jumping ahead. This is a chapter 60 review. I'm talking about chapter 61. But the thing is here if Huang really did go through countless battles with his eyes uncovered, with taking all this pain, you literally see his back shot with like all these different wounds and marks on him. If he was able to do all that, and assumedly, I don't think he was lightly knocking out these men. He was slaughtering them. Like, obviously, these pain marks on him, they hurt. They may not feel the best. They aren't the nicest thing to have on you, but they don't very much represent the depths of the damage they've seen. And notably, that was one of my biggest confusion points of last chapter. I'm like, he's literally watching these people die. like how is he not dying if he's supposed to take the pain of everything they're feeling? But I guess it's only literally just a pain response. It's not doing any real like, it's weird to say it, right? But like, you ever had those moments where you stub your toe or like you do something that hurts, but you say ow sort of just as a reflex? Like, you didn't stub and at the same moment go ow, like you didn't yelp in pain in that moment, but as a reflex afterwards you just say ow, just because that's what your body's kind of trained to do. That's what I feel like Hoang's thing is. Like, yeah, it hurts and it is damaging, but in the long run it doesn't really mean that much. So I guess that balances the ability more. I think the mangaka kind of like, if not heard, the general community consensus kind of thought about it a little bit and was like, darn, this ability's garbage. Like, not gonna lie. I mean, the way he uses it with the air bullets and stuff like that, it's very, very unique. It's very, very useful. But like, Sasuke didn't need no gosh darn key points in order to defeat Poseidon. Jack didn't need no gosh darn key points to defeat Hercules. Buddha didn't need no gosh darn key points to defeat Hajun. Like, there are other ways to fight, and there are general areas of vitals that may need to be hit. But I guess this is the way that Huang succeeds is in the fact that he almost never has to fight his opponent at full strength. As long as he's using the air bullets appropriately, he can always debuff his opponent using these star points and essentially end up making the fight a whole lot easier for him. And that's why, while he has taken damage, Hades is covered in obviously a lot more damage here. And notably, we get a little bit that from Brunhild before we hop back into the fight, that all this was done to fulfill the promise that he made to his mother to become the greatest king of them all. And we cut back to Hades and Huang. Huang back in his traditional fighting stance, and Hades there biting that hand, and he's like, hold on a second. and I love, once again, it's the minor flexes of arrogance for me that I really, really appreciate. Like, Hades in ideation or in response to being the greatest, the statement of Huang being the greatest king, Hades is like, hey, yo, don't make fun of me, homeboy. Did you just call yourself the greatest king? Like, and he has this arrogant look to his face. Like, I don't know. I really, really appreciate that. It's not like the more basic way you could have worded this is like, you're not the greatest king. I am. Like, or a king of man could never be the great. But no, he's literally insinuating the same idea that you could never be the greatest king. Only a deity like me could be. Like, there's nothing you could do to ever get on my level. Scrub. GG. No run back. Like, legitimately, he's saying that in a much more interesting way. In a mocking way. He's like, all the struggles you went through, all the hardship and all that, and none of that qualifies you to be on the same level or even in the same tier as me. Sit your behind down, human boy. It's an appropriate flex, if you will. And we get to see that Huang is like, you know what? Bet. King of the Underworld, you really are swole. However, hate to say it, it be like that when it be like that sometimes. But I made a promise. And that promise was to become the greatest king, no matter what it took. And because of that, I cannot lose to anyone. And we get this beautiful shot of him with his mother spiritually standing behind him as they strike the same pose. And I think that's amazing. It's beautiful. And once again, Huang, after all this backstory, after all this plot, after all this dedication, these declarations, you cannot lose, my boy. You cannot lose. And like, notably, I know this isn't the end to the Greek pantheon, right? Because Apollo is still left. There are more reps to die, like legitimately. So as much as I love Hades, especially due to a lot of the modern recontextualization of Hades and other forms of media, I'm not saying that this Hades is interesting. I'm not saying I don't want to learn more about this Hades' backstory. I'm not saying that all the declarations made about this Hades are false or anything like that. However, considering we do have Apollo, possibly well, not even possibly, just in the up and coming. Unfortunately, Hades, I think you can be sacrificed, my boy. Like legitimately, I wouldn't be too sad if Hades got rid. Mainly because we have no backstory for this Hades. There's no real context. He's just an arrogant king with some respect for humans, and that's cool. That's aight. That's aight. That's kind of heat. But like, we got that with Zeus, but with a better fight. Well, I don't think that's a blasphemous thing to say. Like, if any of y'all down in the comment section. By the way, do you know the like button is free? It greatly helps out the channel whenever you hit the like button. I greatly appreciate it. The channel greatly appreciates the channel growth. Also, the subscribe button is free. If you're new here and you haven't said subscribe, I have a whole bunch of regular Ragnarok reviews, a whole bunch of regular Ragnarok content, and more regular Ragnarok content coming out in the future. So, go ahead, subscribe. That button's free too. We're on Twitch. You can subscribe for free. Okay, enough of that. Enough of the plug. But essentially, the idea here that anyone in the comment section is sort of like, I like this fight more than Zeus versus Adam. I mean, to each their own, not for me. So I feel like it'd be fine for Huang to take this one and just keep it pushing. However, who knows? Maybe not. Because we get to see that after that beautiful declaration, right? The whole crowd, right? The whole audience is looking upon the battle and really seeing what is blatant, right? Like, Huang has taken damage. He's bleeding from some spots and he has some damage on him. But while he has a few spots of damage and is leaking a little bit of blood, Hades is leaking so much blood that it's literally dripping to the floor. He has a hole in his chest and he is covered in wounds. Obviously, one of our fighters is much worse for wear, and it isn't Huang. So seeing this is getting Heimdall to say, like, the king of the underworld, Hades, he's being pushed up against the wall. And to be fair, he is. Hades he's been able to get a few surprise hits off, but in terms of overall battle control, I definitely give it to Huang, just because Huang is using a much more defensive and rotational style that's keeping Hades in. He's essentially, and this is a good thing, right? This is what I love in fights. It's when a character's fighting style ties directly into their personality. Hades is arrogant. He views himself as superior to his opponent. So he's only going to strike. He's only going to take the lead. He's only going to play right into Huang's defensive hands, because that's the only way he knows how to do it. Because he's supreme. He's the highest being there is. And, well, at least, like, the thing is, we know Zeus respects Hades. I'm not sure where Hades stands in power comparison relative to Zeus. Zeus, out of all the deities we've seen so far, even compared to like Hajun and Buddha, like, Zeus just seems different. I know that sounds weird to say, but he just feels different in every way, shape, and form. Notably, and once again, I always bring this up, even though it could have, like, shout out to everyone who always brings up like the idea that maybe that fight with Kronos had some lasting effects on him, and that's why Zeus ages. But in terms of all the deities we've seen so far, Zeus just seems different. And if anyone is in a comparable league of power to him, like Hades, that's crazy for Huang, but also in the same case, Zeus portrayed that better. Hades feels like, in the same, he almost feels like Lubu. Hades feels like Lubu in the sense where he's throwing himself up against this wall that's not going to fall, but he doesn't stop throwing himself up against it. Like when Lubu's legs and arms and everything were broken, he still kept going till he literally died. And in the same vein, Hades seems to be throwing himself up against this wall of Huang that's going to keep using his own force against him, keep weakening him, keep damaging him until he dies. And it'd be like that, and it'd be like that sometimes. Sometimes you got to sacrifice to get something out of this. However, we get to see that Brunhild essentially used her sister in order to specialize in the one thing that can take down Hades. One thing I've been noting, Huang's defense. The martial arts style that Huang uses is to maximize the strength of his opponent and obviously utilize defense over all others. So the weapon, the divine weapon that Huang got, specializing in defense, Alavir, the secret ability behind her name is Army Guardian. And I'm assuming one-man Army Guardian? I mean, I guess the whole idea is that she's supposed to be unbreakable, in a sense. Like, no matter what she'll be able to withstand any of the hits that Hades can dole out, as long as Huang utilizes her properly in tandem with her martial arts, which I think is really, really cool. And it kind of explains how Huang, his armor never cracked it yet. Like, it hasn't broken, even though he's taken on direct hits and direct swings from someone like Hades, who in strength is once again implied to at least be around the same tier as your Poseidons, your Zeuses. Like, these high levels of strength are meant to be darn crazy, and obviously Hades is darn crazy himself, yet Alavir hasn't cracked yet. Meanwhile, Lubu's spear, like looking back at that, that's actually crazy. Like, I wonder what would have happened if Lubu's spear didn't break. Was Thor really just his general superior at that point, and like, even if the weapon had stayed intact, Lubu's own body would have broken? Or is it just that spear broke? Wait, am I remembering that properly? Did the spear break? Update, the spear did in fact break. So yeah, there would have been, I wonder really what would have happened. I wonder if the spear broke and obviously Lubu broke because he wasn't strong enough, or the spear broke and thus Lubu had to take some of the force behind the attack too. I don't know. Essentially, Lubu got a defective product while Huang got a perfect product. And we get to see that even Hermes is studying the fight, like, jeez. So when their air bullets are fired out, attacks are weakened, defenses are shattered. It's a frightening technique without a doubt. And to a point, yeah, like, as much as I was clouding on the star system, as long as Huang can pretty much ignore the pain and just keep fighting, it just like, just keep spitting at you, like, what are you really meant to do? And I know, obviously, Hades finds out a sub-solution, but then there's a answer to said sub-solution very, very quickly. And yeah, it's a strong system, but I think anyone, like, Huang is lucky that Hades is in his reaction range, right? Like, if Hades could blitz him, if you can blitz Huang, the system's essentially useless. And I know that goes with pretty much anything, but other abilities here, I still would say are a bit better, even with the star system. Like, it probably ranks a bit higher than some, I will admit, but some of the top tier abilities are still better. But of course, we get to see that with Hermes admitting this, Ares' natural question, or no, Zeus' follow-up here is that, oh yeah, also, that strength of, or at least the defensive strength of Huang is something that's an air to admire, right? Like, without that, the star system wouldn't be viable at all. Like, he would essentially never be able to use it because he would never be able to get into a situation where he could use it. And of course, man, like, another thing, if I could just leap into the narrative, if I could manifest myself as not even one of the fighters, bro, I wouldn't even need to be one of the fighters. I would just manifest myself into the verse, grab Ares by the throat, and yeet him out of the verse, and then proceed to leave and enjoy the rest of my manga. Like, I just want to smack him, because he literally picks up Hermes and swings him around, and he's like, the deity of war just has no feasible way. No, he's the literal a lord of combat, and he just can't figure out a way to get past these air bullets. And Hermes, as he's being swung around, he's like, honestly, I couldn't really figure out a way. However, and like Hermes, you might as well just finish the swing through. Like, not gonna lie, Hermes almost saved the series right there. Like, Ragnarok would be a perfect 12 out of 10 if it wasn't for Ares. Like, and once again, like, this power display here is what really wants me, like, put him in a fight. Gosh darn it! Like, I don't say one of the godly representatives is like, no, I'm done. I'm not fighting a human. Like, forget that. I ain't dying today. And Hermes has to step up. Let Hermes step up. Let him fight somebody, because the way he literally, like, his fist comes up so swiftly that if he really wanted to swing through, he would have taken Ares' head off. Like, Ares even freezes in place. And we see that Hermes is like, the most frightening blows in a fight are those we cannot see. In other words, an imperceptible attack. And he's right. Like, if you are so busy swinging your brother around, no, I'm kidding. If you're so busy in the middle of combat, swinging and preparing your own strikes that you can't see your opponent, like, lunging in with a strike of their own, obviously, you're in trouble, son. You aren't going to succeed too well in the middle of that fight. However, the thing is, with the air bullets, it is true. They're only perceptible to us. The reason we can see them is because we're beyond this world. We can look upon and see the air that he's firing out. Meanwhile, in reality, like, I'm not sure, like, Like it can literally be confused for inhaling. Like, not gonna lie, like I'm trying to like and Huang makes a very specific lip pose when he does it, but if you're in the middle of a fight, you aren't paying attention to how your opponent is breathing, you're paying attention to how your opponent's going to attack or defend. So obviously, even if you know what the air bullets are, the timing where they're going to come out, where they're going to strike you, where your own vital points are at that moment that are susceptible to air bullets, like there's so many mystery factors that come with dealing with them that you gotta be able to blitz. like legitimately, you can't. Unless you could stop the air bullets themselves, stop Huang from launching them, and or just dodge them entirely, you can't help but fall to them because of how potent they are in terms of dealing, not necessarily dealing out damage per se, but dealing out constant streams of debuffs. And I think that's really cool. This, in fact, hold on. Let me take back what I said about the star change system. The like button is free. The also subscribe button is free. I'm sorry, but the thing is, the most interesting thing about the star change system, now that I think about it, it's the only ability in Record of Ragnarok that actually acts as a legitimate debuff to your opponent. Every other ability is much more a defensive or offensive ability that acts as a buff, or yeah, mainly just a buff to yourself, or you just don't get a buff, you just happen to be super duper strong. In actuality, the star chain system, I'm thinking of Blue Lock of all things, but the Star Puff system, as I'll call it, the Kirby system, is essentially allows Huang to debuff his opponent while staying at his same strength, which allows him to take, obviously, advantage of his weakened opponent. And I think that's actually really, really cool. That's a great way to flip the system up a bit. And I wish Hades had something he could flip the system up a bit with. However, obviously, with this declaration being made that Hades essentially has no way out because of the natural unpredictability of the air bullets, Ares is like, it's an unavoidable technique. You're saying Hades has no chance of it. Like, dude, it's Hades-sama. Even though I'm... See, it's really weird, right? Because I like the idea of Hades, and I want him to win. But at the same time, homeboy's got to go. So, I get it. I get Ares' distress here. But at the same time, Ares is obviously... He freaked out a little bit too much because he's like... Hades talking about he's been through so many battles. There's no way he can lose. And we get to see that Zeus is like speed, power, combat experience. Hades is superior in every way. Is he really though? Is he really? Because the thing is, right? I mean, I guess being superior in speed isn't like an absolute blitz, right? You can be superior in speed to somebody by like 0.1 seconds. They can still be able to react. Like in boxing, you can be faster than somebody, but that time frame, the travel time between your fist in a striking position and your fist to their face, like they can block in that time period. So I guess maybe Hades truly is faster, but Huang is just able to react because of all the travel time that's needed there. But we see that Zeus essentially views it as a balance, right? Like, in order to compensate for his lacking speed, for his lacking power, for his lacking combat experience, Huang is essentially sacrificing himself to stand up to Hades. Like, Hades, despite what it looks like, he still is the superior in every way, shape, and form. It's just that Huang, the human, is using his own sacrificial ability, sacrificing pieces of himself in order to stay alive and stay in the fight. And I love it once again. Like, it's the spice, it's the sauce, if you will. It's the drizzle, the honey mustard on top of the chicken tenders, if you will. We see Zeus sit back, and he declares with a glint in his eyes that humans have no limits. And once again, I'm very interested in to the point where we're building up to for the end of Record of Ragnarok. Because if it really is full on tournament style to the very end, and there's literally just winner loser, and then the manga ends, I'm perfectly fine with that. But essentially, I could really see humanity losing, and then Zeus walking up, and like all the humans have lost, and they're beginning to feel despair, and Zeus goes like, "All right, humans get to live. That was fun." But then the gods who still despise humans, I remember watching, I believe it was the Mysterious Weeb, one of his videos, and he was like going over a data book that dropped for Record of Ragnarok, and I believe Apollo was one of the ones who hated humans the most, like he despised humans, especially if he wins and sticks around, he may be like, hey, no, we won, we're killing them, and like there could be a whole disagreement, and that could lead to like a divine war, like the remainder of the warriors of humanity coming together and fighting for their survival alongside some of the gods that want them saved, like your Thor, your Zeus, your Shivas, like those kinds of beings who grew respect for the humans they defeated. Meanwhile, you have the gods who still view humans as inferior because they never got to fight them. They see this whole thing as a game still. And I don't know, I think that could be very, very cool. And I think it's just very, very poignant how Zeus, someone who loves combat, someone who loves seeing the potential in people being brought out, respects humans to the point where he admits that they have no limits and they have growth. They have like infinite potential for growth. And it seems like someone like Zeus wouldn't want to get rid of that. He's in a way, right? And I know it's gonna sound corny. He's almost like a Saiyan in that sense. Like he doesn't want to throw away the possibility for a good fight. And it seems like after fighting Adam and witnessing all these battles, humanity is always able to somehow in some way provide him a good fight, and he would likely not want to get rid of that. However, speculation for the end of the series aside, we get to see that Hades looks upon himself, right? And he grabs one of his wounds. And then he stares at the blood that's in his hands, right? And he's like, and I love the reflection here once again, right? Like Hades is a character who says very few words, but in those words, there's always meaning, right? He looks at the blood in his hand and readily admits, "You are strong, king of humans. A promise of never losing," right? And he grips the blood in his hand. Obviously, this is the testament to what Huang has been saying. This is his never losing. This is his fighting against all odds. This is him proving himself in a way. And that blood is proof of existence that Hades is forced to acknowledge. The proof of his oath, essentially. And we see that Hades, in a very similar vein to Huang, also has an oath of his own to protect. And he buries his foot into the ground and lunges for Huang. And, as always, Huang is like, "I bet, same attack pattern again, we can rock with this." And he fires out an air bullet. But this time, in order to counteract the air bullet, what Hades does in advance is he starts swinging the Biden around. Essentially, his goal here is to create a vacuum of some sorts, or essentially doing anything to create wind that will destroy the air bullet that Huang fires, essentially removing the negation, allowing him to keep access to superior stats here in terms of his speed and strength. And then we get to see that with this, since he can't see them, he can still dispel them and not worry about his key points, and then he can attack freely. Because when Huang is forced into a defensive position once again, Hades lunges in with the Biden and strikes. However, what we notice is that Hades is once again manipulating himself so well to the point where he lunges in with the bot, and this is really, really cool, right? Like, I'll admit, Hades is fighting in a much more interesting way than his brother was, despite moving seemingly slower. Like, he lunges out with the Biden, right, full length, and he gets Huang to, like, slightly deflect it with his arm. However, he plants his feet into the ground, brings the Biden down in order to lock Huang into place, yanks the Biden back, and lunges in with a knee. He essentially uses Huang as a locking point and proceeds to pull himself along that locking point to bring a knee directly to Huang's face. And if Huang hadn't blocked it with his hand, that man definitely would have gotten, like, I'm confident if his head wouldn't have come off, it would have taken some extreme damage right there, because that's a really smooth play. Dispel the air bullets, lock him in place, and then lunge in with a knee. Because notably, every part of Hades is dangerous, and I know that's weird to say, but like, remember, the biological structure of these deities, while humanoid, is much denser and much more solid than a human's. And not gonna lie, any human, like you, to imagine taking a knee to the face. Obviously, it's not going to feel too well, but obviously these gods with their stronger constructed bodies, any hit from any part of them, especially with someone as strong and as powerful and as fast as Hades, is going to do some numbers to your body. And even when blocking it, and Hades knocks Huang off balance, makes him spit blood just because of the raw power difference, and then Hades goes in, 2 hands on the Biden, ready for the kill. But as Ares is cheering for his uncle, Hermes is like, "You played yourself, my boy." And we see that in that motion, right? And it's a very interesting motion. It almost looks like Hades was going in, like in the previous panel, it looks like he was going in for a downward thrust, right? But then he apparently went in for a decapitation. But in that same moment, like, I'm guessing the angling of Huang's head. Notably, That's actually crazy when you think about it. Hades was mid-swing with both hands on his spear, right? And he was mid-swing. The blade was essentially probably inches from Huang's face. But he managed to fire out an air bullet so fast, and it traveled so quickly. It looks like a double air bullet too, I'm not gonna lie. He fired out 2 air bullets so fast and so quickly to Hades' key points, to the point that he manages to disrupt the entire swing of Hades. And it doesn't just miss, it completely missed. It's almost like Huang hijacked control of Hades' body there, because it's literally, the swing went in a completely different direction. By the way, the like button is free, but also the subscribe button is free, I'm sorry. But we get to see that with that, it sort of left Hades in this weird spot where he's completely exposed, right? I don't know how many of y'all play fighting games, but when you ever whiff a high startup move that has a whole ton of end lag, that's essentially what Hades just did, right? He staggered, he staggered his move, he got in, he got the setup right, he went in, but he whiffed, and now and Hermes explains it bar for bar, word for word. He's like, even if you are hit in the middle of a fight, you didn't notice, to defend yourself against them all is impossible. And he's referring to the air bullets again. And we see Hades, his eyes widen as he locks onto Wang, who's gone into a 180-degree standing split. And we go into Chiyo halberd shape. Bada bing, bada boom. White tiger moonbow. And Huang brings his leg down with such force that obviously the tiger still is behind it. But Hades, and Hades, luckily enough, manages to somewhat dodge. I think that kick was for his head, but even in his staggered state, he's able to react a little bit, and he brings up his arm to block it. And notably, this clash does a lot, right? The wind ripples off of it, Hades blocks it, he's firm in his arm, and you see the two struggle for a little bit. Hades locks eyes directly onto Huang, who's gritting his teeth. Meanwhile, Hades looks sure in himself, and Huang looks a bit unsure. But in the next motion, Huang reels back, pulls off with the kick, and even if once again, I love Hermes being shocked. It's so rare to see him being shocked that I always love when we get to see it. Even Hermes is shocked to see that with that strike, as Hades is pushed back in his fine leather crocodile skin shoes, we see that the power of the king of the underworld, it's very, very mighty indeed, but the techniques of the king of humans is not surpassed. And you see it because as Huang stands there, foot up, breathing heavy, recovering his stamina, Hades has lost an entire portion of his arm. I'm not sure what the part of the arm to call it. A whole piece of flesh from the top, from the very top of his forearm to nearly the bottom of his thumb on his right arm, or no, his left arm, is just gone, straight torn off. However, Hades just looks at it, grips it to see if it still works, and is like, all right, that's fine. And it's the flexing for me. But in actuality, it seriously is. Can you imagine how you would react if you had that much of your flesh just torn off in one attack? You are literally seeing your muscle tendons move and function beneath your skin. Is your first reaction to be like, alright, we still functional, baby, let's keep it moving? It's crazy. I'm not saying that there are probably humans out there who could do that, but at least me, that wouldn't be my first response. My first response would be, ah! I would legit just scream at the top of my lungs, and then maybe recover, and then maybe test my arm. But nah, that's Hades' first reaction, just to test the arm to see if it's working. And we see that in response to such a feat, right? This is the first time Hades' flesh was just torn off by a simple kick. And obviously, sure, he was debuffed a bit, but still, this is impressive to even Hades. He's like, yeah, even though you're human, you did this much. That's W respect, W success to you, my boy. W success. But I'm going to kill you. However, before I get rid of you, before I sentence you to the void of non-existence, allow me to say this. You were magnificent, king of humans. And Huang responds with a big old grin and a howl. And that's where the chapter ends. And honestly, this chapter, for being a continuation of a fight we've been seeing for a little bit at this point, it is very, very good. It shows that when debuffed at least, Hades is very susceptible to the attacks of Huang. Like, it's not just a point where Huang has to redirect Hades' force, as he's been doing so far, like taking the flowing energy and then striking back with it, using momentum essentially to damage Hades. Huang himself, as long as he can get that debuff off on Hades, can damage him. If a strike like that were to land in any of Hades' real vital points, Hades could feasibly kick the bucket, which is a new dimension to the fight that's being added. And I think it's great to see that the current dimensions of the fight, like the air bullets, how they're being reacted to, how the two are fighting, what they're incorporating into the battle. I think that's a great way to evolve the fight, rather than sticking to the common ebb and flow of momentum usage and redirecting damage through that. Instead, we're now leaping towards Huang being on the defensive offensive and Hades being pushed to use new tactics, use more of his body, use more grace, use more of his skill. And I think all of that is really, really cool, and I really, really like it. The chapter as a whole, I will give it a solid, juicy, meaty 8 out of 10. I don't know, like, as cool as the evolution is, there's nothing in this fight that's like overly crazy, and the chapter isn't very long, but the evolution, regardless of that, is still very, very cool. However, those are my thoughts on the chapter. Please tell me your thoughts on the chapter in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with the pencil, writing off.